Meanwhile, the former governor of Kaduna State, Balarabe Musa, has commended the federal government's declaration of June 12 as a National Democracy Day. He says the action is what progressive-minded Nigerians have been clamoring for, stating that it is an indication that Nigeria's democracy is consolidating by the day.
Even the chairman of the electoral body that conducted the June 12 election admitted that Abiola actually won the June 12 election. But nobody did anything in spite of that pronouncement. Right at that time, if we were running a proper country with a system and a leadership appropriate to the situation, right at the time that the chairman of the electoral body that conducted the election said so, that Abiola actually won the election, something similar to what Buhari has now done should have happened. It shows justice can still be achieved in Nigeria. The correct thing can be done. Corrective actions are possible in Nigeria. Yes, and President Buhari has demonstrated this.
The former governor urges the federal government to take a gesture further by investigating and prosecuting all those behind the annulment of the June 12 presidential election in 1993. His words are corroborated by human rights activist Ayodele Adiwale.
We hope President Buhari will follow up with actions to discover who actually was responsible for the nullification of the result of June 12 election and take appropriate action against whoever was responsible for that. No, first investigation, and it is not impossible because the main actors, many of them are still alive. Investigate what led to the annulment of the June 12 election, investigate who were responsible, prosecute them so that they can be punished in an exemplary way so that that can never happen again. There is a small chance of it being political, but largely for honest and just people is not political, it's patriotic.
I appreciate one fact, that for a government to appreciate that an event occurred, for a government to affirm that people's mandate, people's sovereignty must be upheld, especially through the ballot box, for the government to realize the mistake that past government had committed for not recognizing June 12, it means that we are moving forward. And that government must be celebrated and should be given accolade to have done that. And the same government is also leading the battle against corruption and other social vices within our political environment. I believe that we should encourage the Buhari administration, and we should also challenge them to take a step forward, more step forward, by making sure that those who sat down to take the decision of that annulment are brought to justice. Those who annulled that election are made accountable for their deeds because they have committed a treasonable offense against the Nigerian state and against the Nigerian people. And a treasonable felony should not be swept under the carpet.
Mr. Speaker, protect me, Mr. Speaker.
It's a divided session in the House of Representatives. While some lawmakers applaud President Buhari's decision to recognize June 12 as the National Democracy Day, others pick holes in the president's declaration.
There's what you call the Public Holidays Act. The fifth schedule of that act, the principal act, states that 29th of May is our Democracy Day. So if the president intends to change that act, it cannot be by way of a proclamation. It has to come as a bill. We understand the part of the Constitution you read that has to do with declaration of a public holiday. But in this case, it is not declaration of public holiday that we are talking about. We are talking about Democracy Day, as different from a public holiday declaration.
It's the same situation in the Red Chamber.
Everything that he is entitled to must be put together and given to his family. And 3, Ambassador Babagana Kingibe must also be recognized. And because he is still alive, he must be recognized as Vice President of Nigeria. Formally. And everything must be brought into the legislature so that we can right all the wrongs. And, of course, since we're changing from the 29th to the 12th, 12th must be declared a public holiday for the whole of Nigeria, so we start setting.
We must commend the President that finally we are beginning to address injustices in this country. Our prayer is that this must be sustained. We must address injustices all over the country. Those who are complaining about environmental degradation, marginalization, killings, or any kind of injustice, this is time for us to address it. Because any country that sustains injustice is heading to a major crisis. So we must address all the injustices in this land.
The Senate finally makes some resolutions that INEC should announce the results of June 12, 1993 presidential election, that the Buhari administration should ensure that all entitlements due to late MKO Abiola and Babagana Kingibe are paid as president and vice president, that the president administration should recognize Babagana Kingibe as vice president-elect and declare June 12 as a public holiday, and that May 29 remains the date for inauguration. In a statement, the opposition People's Democratic Party (PDP) criticizes the national honor proposed to be conferred on the acclaimed winner of June 12, 1993 presidential election, Chief MKO Abiola. The party says it's marks of hypocrisy and political desperation ahead of 2019 presidential election. But for the daughter of late MKO Abiola, there's need for the government to look further and compensate all those who lost their lives and their families.
When we're looking at the fact that not even just the 2 of them, but so many, and even many that we don't even know their names or their families know that they're gone, because the military were gunning people down on the streets who were protesting, students, young people, journalists. One journalist was blown up or was tortured. We don't really know how Bagauda Kalto was killed. So many were incarcerated, lost their freedom for many years. You know, all kinds of injustices like this occurred at that time. And how do you compensate people for that? I think the only way is to make sure that what they were fighting for is not in vain, that we realize the true democracy in Nigeria. MKO spoke about the need for Nigerians to say farewell to poverty, that we bring about an end to poverty in Nigeria. That the current situation that we're in is actually one of rising poverty, especially, you know, up until, I don't know what the recent figures in the last 3 years have been, but even up until 3 years ago, poverty across Nigeria was rising, you know, and unemployment was rising, you know, so something has to change. And I think if we actually address those issues of jobs, of incomes for the Nigerian people, rights of the Nigerian people, the quality of life, peace, the absence of violence, you know, the absence of insecurity. If we address those issues, that's the best way to compensate families that are dealing with losses that money can never compensate. It can never be about money.